Summer 1943. Camp Crossville, Tennessee. The dark bubbling liquid inside the glass bottle fascinated the German soldier. It was unlike anything he had ever encountered. After 2 years of grueling campaigns in North Africa, surviving on dry biscuits and ersatz coffee, this sweet, carbonated drink called Coca-Cola seemed like a miracle brought to life. It cost just 5 cents at the camp canteen, the same price, guards explained, that American children paid with their allowance. Across the network of U.S. prison camps that summer, 371,683 German POWs came face to face with a reality that shattered every belief. Nazi propaganda had drilled into them about American weakness. They discovered a country where ice cream was an everyday dessert, soft drinks were a normal refreshment, and candy bars were so common that guards sometimes handed them out for free. These simple indulgences, luxuries most German children had never even tasted, did more to dismantle Nazi ideology than any official propaganda effort ever could. Abundance, written in sugar and carbonation, in chocolate and frozen cream, exposed an American industrial power that made German hardship look not like noble sacrifice, but unnecessary suffering. What began as astonishment over American sweets soon evolved into a profound psychological transformation. The desert's end. The surrender of the Afrika Korps in Tunisia in May 1943 delivered roughly 250,000 German and Italian troops into Allied custody. These hardened desert veterans, who had once driven the British to Egypt under Rommel's command, expected brutal treatment as prisoners. Nazi propaganda had warned them to expect cruelty and starvation at American hands. Instead, within hours of capture, they were issued American K rations. These rations, which U.S. soldiers frequently complained about, were treasures to men who had survived on meager portions for months. Crackers, processed cheese, candy, fruit bars, instant coffee, sugar tablets, and cigarettes. To them, these emergency meals were feasts. Army records from the North African processing camps show that American forces even served pancakes with syrup, fresh eggs, and milk, foods long absent from German field rations. Feeding enemy soldiers with better provisions than their own armies had provided began immediately, though the psychological effects would only become clear later. One German officer later testified to the International Red Cross. "We expected to be starved as prisoners. Instead, the Americans fed us better than our own army ever had." That confusion about American resources was the beginning of our education. The Atlantic crossing, the Liberty ships that ferried POWs to America during the summer of 1943, became classrooms of abundance. These mass-produced vessels, built at an astonishing pace, one every 42 hours at peak output, transported up to 30,000 prisoners a month across the Atlantic. Naval records confirm that prisoner rations matched or even exceeded standard crew diets, roughly 3,500 calories daily, including fresh bread, meat, vegetables, and sweetened coffee with milk. Refrigeration systems, standard on American ships, preserved fresh food throughout the voyage. Most astonishing of all, multiple accounts confirm that ice cream was served mid-ocean. The log of the USS General M.B. Stewart in July 1943 recorded that on Independence Day, POWs were treated to ice cream made by the ship's onboard machine, capable of churning out 10 gallons a batch. For men who had not tasted ice cream since before the war, this frozen dessert in the middle of the Atlantic was beyond comprehension. Arrival in America. When ships docked at ports such as Norfolk and Newport News, prisoners confronted the America they had been told could not exist. The Norfolk Naval Base, spanning 4,300 acres, handled more cargo daily than major German ports managed in an entire week. At base exchanges, shops for dock workers, POWs, glimpsed shelves overflowing with candy bars from Hershey, Mars, and Nestlé. Procurement records from 1943 show these shops carried dozens of varieties, all at the same standard price, 5 cents. The train journeys inland reinforced the lesson. Instead of cattle cars, POWs traveled in passenger coaches, dining cars serving hot meals. Menus from July 1943 listed fried chicken, vegetables, pie, and coffee. POWs soon realized this wasn't special treatment. This was ordinary American rail service. Camp life. The U.S. prisoner of war camp system, spread across the country, provided conditions far beyond the Geneva Convention's requirements. Camp Crossville in Tennessee, Typical of the larger sites offered electric lights, running hot water, flush toilets, and heated barracks. But it was the camp exchanges, PX stores, that delivered the greatest cultural shock. Army quartermaster records show these exchanges stocked Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, RC Cola, candy bars, gum, ice cream where refrigeration allowed, cigarettes, tobacco, fresh fruit, snacks, and even beer, 3.2% alcohol. Prisoners earned 80 cents a day for labor, later raised to $1, with Coca-Cola and candy bars priced at 5 cents each. A single day's wage could buy 16 treats, an unimaginable abundance compared to wartime. Germany, where such items, if available at all, required privilege and connections. Coca-Cola, the symbol of America. Above all, Coca-Cola became the defining emblem of American industrial democracy. Company records show that in 1943 alone, 5 billion bottles were produced. The U.S. military contract guaranteed soldiers sent Coca-Cola anywhere in the world, a logistical commitment on a scale Germany could not fathom. POWs quickly realized this drink, unknown to most of them before capture, was everywhere in America. Every camp received regular deliveries. Work details saw vending machines and coolers at gas stations, schools and factories. Americans of all ages drank it, casually, sometimes leaving bottles half-finished and tossing them aside. What stunned the technically minded prisoners most was the uniformity. Coca-Cola tasted identical, whether sipped in Maine or Texas, a feat of mass production and quality control far beyond anything German industry had achieved. The secret lay in the syrup concentrate made in Atlanta, shipped nationwide to bottlers, then distributed with perfect consistency. Coca-Cola's presence in every camp was no accident. Company archives confirm many facilities received 200-300 cases per week, each case holding 24 bottles. Camp Hearn, Texas alone consumed nearly 7,000 bottles of Coca-Cola every week during the summer of 1943. To German prisoners, the presence of ice cream in American camps seemed unbelievable. They hadn't tasted it since before the war. Yet U.S. Army records confirmed that ice cream was served regularly in camps with sufficient refrigeration during the hot months. For the American military, ice cream was considered vital for morale, so much so that special ice cream barges were built for the Pacific Fleet. At Camp Shelby, Mississippi, the Independence Day celebration on July 4, 1943, featured ice cream made on site. Prisoners watched as hand-cranked freezers turned ice, salt, cream, sugar, and flavoring into gallons of frozen dessert. The casual use of scarce resources, ice in midsummer, cream and sugar for a treat, displayed priorities Germans found incomprehensible. By 1944, many camps were equipped with electric ice cream machines. The variety available, vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, butter, pecan, actually surpassed what most German ice cream shops had offered before the war. Prisoners could purchase an ice cream sandwich or bar for 10 cents, or cups of multiple flavors at the same price. Army procurement records show that the larger camps routinely ordered between 50 and 100 gallons of ice cream weekly during summer. While availability varied by season and location, prisoners were regularly able to enjoy this frozen luxury that had long disappeared from German life. Sugar carried an even greater psychological weight. In wartime Germany, sugar was tightly rationed. Civilians were allotted just 280 grams per month, when supplies were even available. In American prison camps, by contrast, bowls of sugar sat openly on mess hall tables for unlimited use. Quartermaster reports from 1943-1945 indicate that camps received 100-pound sacks of refined sugar every week. Camp bakeries used it without restraint, producing cakes, cookies, and pies on a regular basis. Coffee, tea, cereals, and desserts were sweetened freely. One incident at Camp Aliceville, Alabama in August 1943 highlights the difference. In the humid weather, several hundred pounds of sugar hardened into unusable blocks. Instead of steaming and recovering it as Germans would have, the American kitchen staff simply discarded it and ordered fresh supplies. German prisoners working in the kitchens were reportedly horrified at what they considered waste. Chocolate provided another lesson in American abundance. Major companies Hershey, Mars, Nestle were producing millions of bars each month despite wartime restrictions. The U.S. military alone purchased 380 million pounds of chocolate during the war years. Camp exchanges sold numerous chocolate products, standard Hershey bars, D-ration and emergency bars, as well as a variety of candy bars containing chocolate, all priced between 5 and 10 cents. Prisoners discovered that Americans even had brand preferences, choosing one type of chocolate over another as casually as one might select bread. In addition, monthly Red Cross packages distributed to German POWs often included chocolate. American Red Cross records confirm that standard parcels contained 1 or 2 chocolate or candy bars along with instant coffee, processed cheese, crackers, canned meat, soap, cigarettes, and writing supplies. These packages supplemented the already generous U.S. rations, giving prisoners luxuries that German civilians couldn't access even in basic form. Thanksgiving 1943 introduced German POWs to an American holiday of abundance. This uniquely American celebration demonstrated organizational capacity on a national scale far beyond anything Germany managed. Army records show that every prison camp served a traditional meal: roast turkey with stuffing, mashed potatoes and gravy, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, vegetables, pumpkin pie, coffee, and milk. Coordinating turkey dinners for 425,000 prisoners plus millions of servicemen worldwide highlighted American logistics at its peak. The fact that German prisoners were fed the same meals as American troops directly contradicted Nazi racial ideology. Christmas 1943 brought unexpected generosity from civilians. Church groups, civic societies, and ordinary Americans sent packages to enemy prisoners. The American Friends Service Committee alone distributed 50,000 Christmas parcels to German POWs. These usually contained homemade cookies, candy, toiletries, books, games, writing materials, and cigarettes. Local communities also added support. In Tonkawa, Oklahoma, townspeople delivered home-baked goods to POWs, while in Hearne, Texas, church groups brought Christmas cookies and candy into the camp. This kindness toward enemy soldiers shocked prisoners. Americans with family members fighting against Germany still extended charity to their captives, displaying strength through compassion rather than revenge. As U.S. labor shortages grew, German POWs were increasingly employed outside the camps, gaining direct experience with American food production. By 1944, around 100,000 prisoners worked in agriculture and food processing. In Michigan orchards, they picked cherries destined for maraschino production, the bright red garnish for ice cream sundaes. The sheer scale overwhelmed them, single orchards producing tons of fruit just for decoration. In canneries, they observed American quality control practices that rejected vast quantities of perfectly edible food for the smallest imperfections. Records from Del Monte in 1944 show that roughly 15% of fruit was discarded from canning due to minor blemishes or irregular size, often redirected to animal feed. In Colorado and Nebraska, sugar beet processing revealed levels of mechanization that surpassed anything Germany had achieved. Individual American farms produced more sugar beets than entire German regions. Prisoners discovered that the United States generated about 7 million tons of sugar each year from both cane and beets, explaining the effortless abundance they observed. German captives working near schools saw the beginnings of organized school lunch programs. Children were provided with hot meals that included milk, protein, and vegetables. Although the National School Lunch Act was not passed until 1946, similar initiatives were already underway during the war. The daily milk program especially impressed German onlookers. Thousands of schools received fresh milk deliveries every day, a logistical feat Germany could not match even for its military. Some cafeterias even sold ice cream. The notion that American children could purchase frozen desserts at school while German children endured shortages left a lasting impression. When lower security prisoners were escorted to American diners, they directly encountered democratic abundance. Small restaurants offered menus rivaling elite German establishments, yet available to anyone with modest means. Price lists from 1944 record hamburgers for 25 cents, Coca-Cola for 5 cents, pie slices at 15 cents, ice cream sundaes for 25 cents, and full dinner specials for 75 cents. Service was equal. A factory worker and a bank president sat side by side at the counter, served the same meals by the same waitress at the same price. Access to American publications further highlighted production gaps. U.S. output in 1944 alone included about 7 million tons of sugar, 380 million pounds of chocolate and cocoa products for the military, 5 billion bottles of Coca-Cola in 1943, more than 500 million gallons of ice cream, and 119 billion pounds of milk. In contrast, Germany's wartime production was far more limited. Sugar was heavily rationed, chocolate reserved mostly for the military, soft drinks scarcely produced, ice cream practically non-existent, and milk tightly rationed. By late 1944, the flow of aid had reversed. German prisoners were sending food packages back home instead of receiving them. Using camp wages, they purchased American goods, chocolate bars, canned foods, instant coffee, and mailed them to their families. International Red Cross records confirm that about 11 million parcels were sent from prisoners in America to Germany, most containing food. The irony was stark. Families of free citizens in Germany relied on packages of American abundance from their captured relatives. American rationing further emphasized the divide. In the U.S., sugar allowances were 2 pounds per person monthly, over 3 times the German ration when available. Meat allowances stood at 28 ounces per person weekly, more than Germans often received in an entire month. Even with rationing, Americans ate at levels Germans considered unimaginable luxuries. According to the Office of Price Administration, U.S. citizens still consumed about 74 pounds of sugar per capita in 1944, 10 times Germany's level. Beyond Coca-Cola, German prisoners learned of an entire American soft drink industry. Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, RC Cola, Orange Crush, and many regional labels competed nationwide. The mere existence of multiple companies producing similar drinks highlighted a surplus-driven market economy, impossible under Germany's controlled system. Bottling plants in every major city churned out millions of bottles each year. Distribution networks reached even the smallest towns, gas stations, and shops. By war's end, American soft drink production reached billions of bottles annually, several dozen per citizen. This single sector outproduced entire branches of German consumer goods. In spring 1945, the contrast became undeniable. Newsreels showed American soldiers advancing through Germany handing out chocolate and gum to children. German prisoners in America watched as these children, starved by their own government, rejoiced at American candy. U.S. troops carried enough sweets to give away freely, while the German regime failed to feed its own youth. Scenes of concentration camp liberations, where American soldiers shared rations with skeletal survivors, underscored the humanity of the victors and the failure of the Reich. By 1945-46, German prisoners were repatriated to a devastated homeland. Many had gained weight in captivity, while their families had wasted away. The physical contrast was undeniable. Returning prisoners were healthier than when captured, while their loved ones bore the marks of starvation. Some men returned carrying Red Cross parcels filled with chocolate, coffee, and canned goods, treasured gifts for families that had gone without. Children who had forgotten the taste of chocolate received Hershey bars from fathers who had eaten ice cream regularly in prison camps. These experiences shaped post-war attitudes. Many former prisoners became unexpected advocates for the Marshall Plan. They had witnessed firsthand that American prosperity was not based on conquest but on production. Their testimony that the United States could rebuild even its enemies helped Germans accept American aid. They had seen a society wealthy enough to waste food while fighting a global war. This new understanding that power could come from creation instead of destruction laid the groundwork for West Germany's economic miracle of the 1950s, informed partly by lessons learned in American prison camps. Former prisoners of war who had seen American production, distribution, and consumer culture firsthand carried those lessons into Germany's post-war recovery. They discovered that mass production could turn luxuries into everyday goods. Standardization delivered both quality and efficiency. Abundance fostered political stability, and industrial democracy consistently outperformed authoritarian control. Insights once symbolized by Coca-Cola and ice cream shaped the outlook of an entire generation of German business and political leaders. The transformation of German POWs through exposure to American food culture is well documented in quartermaster records, International Red Cross reports, corporate Archives, especially those of Coca-Cola prisoner, correspondence, censored but preserved, post-war interviews, memoirs, and academic studies, particularly Arnold Kramer's extensive research. Kramer, considered the foremost historian of German POWs in America, concluded that food abundance played a central role in ideological change. His findings showed that the effortless American plenty succeeded, where official re-education programs had failed, dismantling the myth of Nazi superiority. The numbers themselves tell the story. Between 1943 and 1946, German POWs in America received 3,600 calories daily. Their rations included 4 pounds of sugar monthly, 32 ounces of meat weekly, and a full quart of milk each day. Ice cream was a regular summer treat, and soft drinks were limitless at 5 cents each. In comparison, German civilians at home subsisted on 1,500 calories per day. Their sugar ration, when available, was just 280 grams monthly. Meat averaged 10.5 ounces per week, often absent. Milk was scarce, ice cream didn't exist, and soft drinks were unavailable. These disparities were not propaganda but carefully recorded realities. The fact that enemy prisoners ate better than German citizens demonstrated how deeply American abundance extended even to its captured foes. The influence of American food culture on post-war Germany was profound. Coca-Cola reappeared in West Germany in 1949, quickly becoming a symbol of alliance with the United States. Ice cream parlors modeled after American soda fountains began opening in German cities. Candy bars and chewing gum became small but powerful emblems of recovery. Many former POWs became importers of U.S. food products, understanding their cultural and psychological appeal. They recognized these items represented more than taste. They embodied abundance, democracy, and modern life. The arrival of supermarkets in Germany during the 1950s was also championed by former POWs who had seen American grocery stores. They understood that democratic abundance required new systems of distribution, not just higher production. In interviews and memoirs, former prisoners consistently emphasized the impact of food. One former Afrika Korps officer reflected in a 1975 interview, "We expected to defeat a weak, divided America. Instead, we found a nation that gave ice cream even to its enemies. That was when we knew we had lost more than the war, we had lost our entire worldview." Another veteran, interviewed for a documentary in 1985, recalled, "My first Coca-Cola was like drinking the future. It was sweet, fizzing, completely unnecessary, and available to anyone for a nickel. That drink contained everything Nazi Germany was not: abundant, democratic, joyful." Such testimonies, collected over decades, confirm that American food abundance achieved what military defeat alone could not: the complete ideological transformation of a generation. The men who had marched into captivity as soldiers of a dictatorship returned as witnesses to democratic prosperity. Historians now regard the POW experience in America as one of the most successful re-education efforts of the war, not through propaganda, but through exposure. The method worked because it relied on observation, not instruction. Prisoners saw American society operating at peak productivity while even treating its enemies with dignity. Food was central to this experience because it was universal. Hunger and satisfaction need no translation. The evidence was visible. Men who had known scarcity gained weight. Their health improved, and every day brought 3 solid meals plus optional canteen purchases. Each meal was a demonstration of industrial power. Every Coca-Cola represented standardization and mass distribution. Every ice cream sundae showed that abundance could be democratic. These stories did not end with the men themselves. Children of former POWs grew up hearing tales of America's unimaginable plenty. What once seemed fantastical was confirmed in the 1950s and beyond, as West Germany's recovery brought American products to their own shelves. Many of these children later traveled, studied, or worked in the United States, driven by their fathers' memories of abundance. There they found the stories were true: supermarkets overflowing with variety, soda fountains offering sundaes, and candy aisles with endless choices. The influence spread into West German business culture. Lessons about consumer abundance, standardized quality, and democratic markets informed the nation's economic rebirth. The economic miracle was not only about industrial recovery but about ensuring ordinary Citizens had access to plenty. This legacy endures even today, symbolized in part by the more than 400 McDonald's restaurants now operating in Germany. Coca-Cola became everywhere. Ice cream turned into something ordinary. The journey from scarcity to plenty, begun in American prison camps, had reached its conclusion, yet the lesson it carried remained profound. Ideology reshaped not by hunger, but by abundance, not by cruelty but by kindness, not through propaganda but through example. German POWs who once doubted that ice cream and Coca-Cola could exist in captivity came to witness democracy's ultimate strength, the capacity to generate such abundance that even enemies could be treated to it without hesitation. The tale of German prisoners and America's food culture represents one of history's strangest triumphs. A war won with generosity, an ideology undone by ice cream, a worldview shattered by soft drinks. Their change did not come through punishment but through plenty. They entered captivity convinced of German superiority and American weakness, yet departed with the understanding that U.S. power came from a productive system so vast it could afford to waste resources without fear. A society that could sell Coca-Cola to prisoners for just 5 cents held power beyond mere military force. Even the ice cream sundae became a symbol. With its multiple layers, ice cream, syrup, whipped cream, nuts, and cherry on top, it represented excess turned into routine. Each element on its own exceeded German expectations. Together they formed an unimaginable luxury that prisoners could ask for seconds while German children went hungry revealed the depth of Nazi failure. Many former POWs remembered the precise moments their outlook shifted. The fizz of a first Coca-Cola, the first spoonful of ice cream, the taste of a Hershey bar. These sensory experiences carried more conviction than lectures. They had tasted democracy and it was sweet. The transformation proved lasting and irreversible. Men who once marched under the banner of the Third Reich returned as witnesses of abundance, carrying the revolutionary message that prosperity was born of freedom, not conquest. They had discovered that America's most powerful weapon was not its army, but its ability to hand ice cream to prisoners. In the end, bottles of Coca-Cola and bowls of ice cream achieved what military victories could only attempt: the complete transformation of enemy hearts and minds. German POWs, who once doubted such wealth could exist, became its most faithful messengers, bringing home the truth that democracy tasted like chocolate and freedom sparkled like carbonation. Their story endures as a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories are won not through destruction, but through display, not by seizing but by sharing, not through hatred, but through the simple act of serving ice cream to prisoners on a summer's day. Those men, once enemies, became unlikely ambassadors of freedom, forever changed by the improbable reality of Coca-Cola and ice cream in American prison camps.